For centuries, women in the United States have lived under systems that view their bodies not as their own but as something to be controlled, regulated, and used. When we look at history, it's clear that control over women's bodies has always existed, just in different ways throughout time. Even with social movements and efforts to create change, it has never fully gone away. It has just evolved and adapted to fit each time period and society. This unfortunate reality raises the question of how has the United States controlled women's bodies throughout history and in present day. Based on my research, I argue that throughout history, the U.S. has controlled women's bodies through systems such as slavery and forced sterilization, and continues to do so through reproductive laws in order to continue having power over certain groups of people for their own benefits. Starting in the era of slavery, we can see one of the earliest examples of control over women's bodies was through forced reproduction of enslaved women. In 1619, slavery began in what is now the United States, formerly the English colonies. This system allowed black individuals to be treated as legal property against their will, where they were exploited. Although the system targeted all black people, black women faced a unique form of oppression beyond just labor. Their bodies were used for slave owners to ensure they were in control while increasing their wealth. According to the article Myths and Misunderstandings, Slavery in the United States by Botzer, the legislature codified two of the key elements of American slavery. A black servant was enslaved for life, and any child born of an enslaved woman was automatically enslaved. These laws took hold across the colonies and developed in tandem with market capitalism, creating chattel slavery, the treatment of human beings as commodities, products to be bought, sold, given, inherited. In other words, black women became a system of profit because of their reproductive ability. Every child they birthed meant more labor, more property, and more wealth for these slave owners. The article also mentioned that fertility led to a growth in the population of enslaved people in the colonies. This stat shows that the body of enslaved women became a way to maintain slavery for generations. Instead of letting women have their own choices about their body, those in power found ways to control reproduction to keep having control and for their profits. Although slavery eventually ended, the control of women's bodies didn't go away. It instead took new forms through government policies and medical practices, one example being forced sterilization. Forced sterilization is a procedure that permanently removes someone's ability to reproduce without their consent or knowledge. Rather than exploiting women's abilities to have children, they decided to control which women are allowed to have children. Rather than encouraging reproduction for profit like they did during the time of slavery, they began restricting reproduction on certain groups. Women in marginalized communities were seen as a population to be limited through these policies. According to the article Forced Sterilization and Eugenics Program in the U.S. by Lisa Coe, forced sterilization was used as a means of controlling undesirable populations. Immigrants, people of color, poor people, unmarried mothers, the disabled, the mentally ill. Federally funded sterilization programs took place in 32 states throughout the 20th century. They show how sterilization was not about individual cases, but about a larger system of deciding what groups were not fit for society. Reproduction became something regulated by the government in order to shape the population based on things like race, class, and social status. The article also states as many as 25 to 50% of Native American women were sterilized between 1970 and 1976, often without their full consent and/or knowledge during unrelated procedures. This reveals how institutions took advantage of their power to target communities that were already vulnerable, especially women, whose abilities could be taken from them in a place that was supposed to care for them. They didn't receive care, instead they were subjected to procedures that they were not okay with. Control over women's bodies has continued through medical systems, reinforcing the pattern of controlling women throughout time. Now, in recent years, control over women's bodies continues through reproductive laws, specifically in abortion rights. One of the biggest cases involving women's reproductive freedom was Roe v. Wade. According to the article Roe v. Wade written by the Center for Reproductive Rights, in 1973, the U.S. Supreme Court's ruling in Roe v. Wade recognized that the decision whether to continue or end a pregnancy belongs to the individual, not the government. For many years, this was a big step toward giving women more control over decisions involving their body and rights. However, it didn't last. Roe v. Wade was overturned in 2022 through the Dobbs v. Jackson Women's Health Organization case, where many states place restrictions on abortion access. The article adds that more than a dozen states have banned abortion outright, forcing people to travel hundreds or thousands of miles to access abortion care or to carry pregnancies against their will. The thing that makes this significant is the fact that even though we are living in a time of social progress and more conversation about ethics, equality, and human rights, the US still continues to place limits on women's choices. Although methods of control have changed throughout history, the desire to maintain power over women's bodies, especially those who come from marginalized communities, have never disappeared. Based on what we've seen from history, this topic connects to themes from class, especially race, gender, and power. Understanding the past helps us recognize how these systems continue affecting people today. More importantly, by educating ourselves and those around us, we can challenge this pattern and break the cycle.